So I came to Hawaii because I had actually sold all my stuff after I wrote Science of Yoga to travel the world and go on, a book tour. I knew the book was going out in Japanese, so I had something planned in Japan and in Germany, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So now, with
COVID.
nowhere to live and no stuff, I ended up in my mom's basement. And a little bit of that, I was like, you know what? I need to get away. And so I went to Hawaii for a getaway week long vacation. And it's turned into 3 years. I just never left. I kept having things to do next week, and it was a great place to stay. So I've stuck
Good
around.
choice. Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that wonder, Prince George, British Columbia, where would that be? Well, everybody around the world probably knows about Vancouver. It's about 500 miles north of Vancouver. And that puts it in, or 800 kilometers for my friends in Europe, and that puts us in the center, physically in the center of British Columbia. Big province, lots of timber, east to west, north to south. And so that's where we are. And then today, a very special day, and I have a very special guest. Her name is Anne Swanson, and Anne has very interesting background, is an author and a very established one, and working on at least her second book right now, or maybe it's already done, and she will talk about that. In particular, she will be talking about yoga and mediation and a number of other things. She spent some time in India and in China, and she is an amazing guest. Anne, welcome to the show.
Yeah. So glad to be here. And I'm located in Hawaii, which is the most isolated island on Earth that people live on. So different way of being center.
Yeah, but a lot of people like to go there, right? Especially from here as well. And I've been there several times, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. So,
It
and
is.
give us a bit of background about yourself. Where it all started, where it began, and then but did it take you through the schooling system from there on in? Then somehow you ended up becoming an author, and obviously the other part, the very, very important part of your life, is being very involved in mediation.
Yes. Well, meditation helps you with mediation, helps you to
Right,
have those those better communications. But yes, I teach meditation now, but I wasn't always a chill person.
right.
I was a very anxious person, even from a child by nature. I felt like social anxiety when I'd go to the doctor's office to get a shot or to get a procedure done. I would pass out on the floor. And
Oh
I
no.
also dealt with a lot of chronic pain. And so I came to yoga and meditation for my own health, for improving those really debilitating issues I had.
So, where were you born, in which area?
Yeah, I was born in Providence, Rhode Island. My dad was a rocket scientist at NASA, and he
Okay.
had a job teaching at Brown University. And so they were up there just for 1 year. So I was born up north in the US, but I grew up in the South in Virginia.
Okay. And then you got training and education there in that area,
Yeah,
and
I went to
then
art school
wow,
originally at Virginia Commonwealth University. So I studied sculpture and photography and film and painting. And then from there, after completing my degree in art, I went to China. I ended up buying a one-way ticket to China when I graduated from college, and going there to teach English as well as, I had studied Chinese, so to practice my Mandarin. And that's the time that I got most heavily into mind body practices, from Tai Chi to yoga to meditation, because it was a very dark time in my life in China. It was very depressing for me there.
yeah. So how long were you there?
I was in China. I went there several times, but this time I was there teaching a semester in college. I was
Okay.
teaching English to future English teachers in China, and where I was located was very isolated. It was in Sichuan province in the west, and there weren't that many foreigners. So people would stare at me and point at me in the street and gather around. And it was very polluted. And I just felt very depressed while I was there.
Oh
And so I
no.
turned to meditation and yoga and Tai Chi in the parks with the older folks to get back in touch with myself.
Tai Chi, is that when they stand like this and they go like, I don't know exactly how it goes, but they it's part of the nature that they have, or they do that, right?
Yes, it's very gentle
Yeah,
movements that are
yeah,
flowing.
yeah,
And Tai Chi is done as a martial arts, but it's a defensive martial art. So now it's
right,
practiced mostly for its health benefits.
right,
And it's really great for older people because anybody can do it. It's very accessible.
right.
But I was getting into it for settling my energy. I was feeling anxious and depressed simultaneously.
So were you contracted to be there for a period of time?
I
So
was, yeah,
so
semester.
you could had difficulty to say, I don't like it here, I'm gonna leave. But then
No, I couldn't leave.
you already spoke the language Mandarin, so did you
I was
take that?
conversational.
Yeah, but still, so so how long were you there?
So it was the about 5, 6 months of the teaching at the university. And then I ended up doing my yoga teacher training there. And the teachers were, half of them were Chinese. So half my training was in Mandarin Chinese. I had to like do my practice teaching to become a yoga teacher in Chinese. And then the other half of my teachers were Indian. So that part was in English. And when I was done with my teacher training, they said, you know what, you're already almost there. Why don't you just go to India and continue your studies?
Yeah.
So, with the encouragement of my teachers, I went to India after that point. I traveled solo there too. And I went deep into the Himalayas in the north in Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama lives now in exile. And I went there to study yoga, meditation, sound healing, variety of modalities. And my teacher, Yogi Shivadas, he was very much into philosophy and the tradition of yoga, but also anatomy and physiology and the science supporting yoga. And that sparked an interest for me. So I ended up going back to the US, and with the art school behind me, I then switched directions and studied science. I did the pre-med course load. I worked in a cadaver lab. I studied anatomy and physiology to go in the direction of going into the medical field at that time. But I ended up going for a master's of science in yoga therapy instead, which was a better suited for me.
My goodness. So, and all the while, right from the time that you were young, you were affected by anxiety, and so fairly severely, really, because what you were saying is that you would pass out.
Yeah.
So did that then lasted even into your adulthood
You
until you
know,
started? Yeah,
I would say I still have some anxiety now, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. Like it's now, instead, it's in the back seat. It's not in the driver's seat of the car, right?
right.
I'm able to use these tools to recognize that my thoughts are not me. My thoughts are not facts. And instead, to be able to, do breathing practices and short meditations or movements that help me get back into my body and into the present moment. So I have a lot more tools now. But yeah, my anxiety was really bad for a long time, and steadily it got better and better. And now I can go to the doctor's office without passing out. I have specific meditations to help people through that sort of panic attack situations.
Yeah, we all indirectly sometimes had it, and I went through a period when things were difficult that I was trying to deal with, and then I got medication for it that was not very good, actually. Xanax, very addictive, and
Mm.
and at one point when I tried to get off of it, uh, I did, but this quite a while ago, to 20, 30 years ago. But the it would be where anxiety to me was like it felt like I was in a vice, and
Mm.
but yeah,
And have you tried meditation or some
no,
practices to help you with your anxiety?
no,
Never tried it? Well,
no.
we'll have to do a little bit of 1 minute meditations in our
Oh
session
no,
today because,
I like that, Anne, because
yeah.
and we, yeah. So let's, and we're gonna do that, and I want to get that part too. The thing that interests me is that you had such an interesting background when you were kind of searching for directions as to where you would
Hmm.
go, and then you said you then, so you already acquired the language of speaking Mandarin
Hmm.
with the idea in mind of going to China at some point?
Yeah, the reason I wanted to learn Mandarin is kind of random. When I was
Right.
a small child, I was obsessed with panda bears. I would dig holes in the backyard. My mom said if I dug long enough, I would get to China. And I think she was just trying to get the energy out of me because I was an energetic child. But I loved pandas. All my stuffed animals were pandas, and they would be lined up on the wall, and I would teach them. I was always a teacher naturally, but teaching them like school. And so I wanted to go see the pandas, is why I studied Chinese in school. I knew I wanted to study a language, and I kind of left it up to serendipity, left it up to the universe. What language should I study? I'd already been studying Spanish and spent some time in South America. And I was like, I want to learn totally different language. And I then randomly, right after setting this intention, I opened my email for my university, and a visiting professor was coming from China for just 1 year. And there was an intensive course to get basically a minor in Mandarin Chinese. And I signed up right then. I was one of the first people to sign up for it. So it was kind of just like this spark of interest. I knew I was interested in going to see the pandas because at the end of the year, we would go to China and see
Yeah.
the pandas. And I wanted to learn something new.
So Chinese is not easy, right?
I must have been Chinese in a past life, I joke, because it was a lot easier for me than Spanish. I definitely
Wow.
excelled in it. And I was told that I had very good tones in Chinese when I can't sing at all. And so usually people that are good at Chinese and recognizing the different tones, they can sing, but I cannot hold a tune. Do not ask me to sing. But for some
Right.
reason, Chinese was something easier for me to pick up. Now, reading and writing, very hard because it's symbols rather than phonetic
Yeah.
letters like other languages. But
Yeah.
speaking it was a lot more natural for me than Spanish. There's no grammar. So there's no like conjugating a verb. There's no past tense, present tense, future tense, none of that. You just say when it happened or is happening, and then you say it. That's why when we hear Chinese people speaking English, it can sound quite simplified because the language is so simple grammatically, which I loved.
Yeah. I grew up in Holland, so I speak Dutch, and Dutch is also kind of a difficult language, but it's not like Italian and Spanish. It's a da ba da 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 da. It's
Mm,
more like la 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 la. It's not, it doesn't flow, and it doesn't
mm.
have Italian and even Spanish have that. Like it's a pleasure to
Romance language.
listen to it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and Dutch, and then I learned uh, in northeastern Holland, we speak a dialect, and that is very farmer-like. Oh my God! And once you have the dialect, it's very difficult. Everybody in Holland said, "Oh, you're from the farmer country." That's where they speak that. So, but it's interesting. The other languages, spoke Dutch, and then got to acquire some German, and in our schools teach German, and then in the higher grades English and French, and then coming from a small country, it's fairly important to be able to speak other languages as well. And then English obviously is spoken pretty much around the world, right, as a secondary language.
Yes, most common second language, but Chinese being the most common first language
Yeah,
because there's so many people there. At least last time I checked. So
1.3
that's one other
billion.
reason. Yes, a lot of
Yeah,
people speak it, but they have lots of dialects too. So
yeah,
even you
yeah,
go from one place to another and you have to change the way you speak a little bit.
yeah, yeah. So you were there for a period, and then from there, and then you came back to the
Hmm.
States, and then
Yeah.
what happened?
So then after coming back from India to the States, I did all of the science courses that you need to go into the medical field. And I ultimately, at the end of this, I ended up going a different path. I was about to apply to schools, and then I saw this program, this Master's of Science in Yoga Therapy. The very first program that was a master's degree pop up, and I was like, wait, that's what I want to do. So I
Yeah,
signed up for that. I was also like, at this time, I was like one of the last people to sign up. It started like the next week. And so that felt quite serendipitous to be a part of the very first cohort of that program. And then when I graduated from this Master's of Science, just exploring all the research supporting yoga and meditation and breath work practices, pranayama as they call it, I then was searching for jobs. And,
yeah,
as many people experience, even with a master's degree, sometimes, especially with a master's degree, it's harder to find a job. I
yeah.
kept getting rejections, one after the other. And I think I was over 100 rejections at this point. But
Not
I
good for
held faith.
anxiety.
It's not. But I was reading a lot of self-help books
Yeah.
during this time.
So,
And so I was doing a lot of meditation and journaling and really trusting that a big opportunity was coming my way. I was going to do something great with all that I had just learned from my travels, from the workshops, from my studies. And I knew it was coming. And I was patient. And then I randomly got an email from one of the biggest publishers in the world. My publisher is DK, Penguin Random House. Oops.
okay.
Penguin Random House actually is it was the publisher that overrides DK.
So what
And
is the title of the book there, Anne?
well, this new book is Meditation for the Real World, but
Yeah,
we're
that's the
back.
new one. The
We're
first,
back 5 years ago. Yes, the first one was
the
Science
science
of
of
Yoga.
yoga, right?
Yes, Science of Yoga.
I
And
like
so I
the cover of it.
and the images inside were CGI
I like
images
that. I like that.
that some of the best illustrator in the world, and the team for design is just brilliant.
Oh my
So
goodness, yeah. And the size of the book is different than what I'm familiar with. And then is it mainly uh, pictures of the
it's
book, or
pictures, but it's packed full of science and research. I mean, the amount of articles supporting every statement in this book is really uh, a lot of peer-reviewed research. But yeah, it's the pictures really guide you through it. It helps the visual learner, and
right?
it breaks down all the systems of the body. So not just the muscles
I
and bones,
I love it. So
but also
is it
how does it affect you on a
available?
cellular level? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Anne.
I was going to say it talks about how it affects us on a cellular level and from every system of the body, from mental health perspective, and all aspects of your life.
So is
And
it
it is available anywhere.
anywhere, meaning Amazon and all the other things? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
available anywhere and in 15 languages. So
And
probably in whatever language you're thinking, it's probably in it.
yeah. So how did they publisher or the marketing side come to you with this idea? Did you already have the idea and they picked it up, or was it they had kind of the idea of doing something like that and trying to find the person that could make it happen?
Yeah. That's how serendipitous this is I was inviting in this big opportunity into my life that brought together all that I had just learned about the science of yoga. And I didn't imagine that it would be a book. That wasn't like the first thing. I'm graduated from school. I'm going to write a book. It wasn't my top thing on mind. But they had the idea of a series. This was the very first in the series, The Science of. So since then, we have science of running, science of Pilates, science of HIIT, science of stretching. Now, this was the very first one. So they had the idea, and what they needed was somebody with a master's degree in the field. At this point, there are only about 20 of us with a master's degree in the field of yoga therapy because that program
Wow.
had just ended. Yeah.
And so that was the first one in the series. Are you doing
Mhm.
more than in the series as well of the other ones?
I just might. So we're in discussions about that right now.
Okay. So
I can't reveal.
this one already, correct me if I'm wrong, already you have sold 500,000 copies.
It's around that range when you look at all of the different languages. Yeah, at
Right.
least that.
Amazing. And so it's interesting because I'm an author as well, and I've written about my fourth one is coming out in a couple of months from now. My first one
Oh,
was
wow.
this, Against All Odds, and it's not anything like the, I find it amazing what you have done here. This book is more like an autobiography, but I never wrote a book in my life, and so many people said to me, "Oh, you had such an interesting life. Why don't you write a book?" And and as I said, it's not easy, at least not for me. So over the last 20 years, I kept writing and doing it more
Oh,
and more, and
wow.
then stopping, still do it again and again. And I'm 83, so about 5, 6 years ago, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. And then with an autobiography, if you do it, you cannot do it and then I say, I don't like it, throw it away, do another one. You got one crack at it, that's it.
Yeah.
And so this one is 80 years of my life. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And
Wow.
that's been quite popular, not anything near what you are doing, but the process is very interesting. And then the other part that I did, and I'm going to quickly show you that, and then we'll talk about. I wrote another book as well that you may find interesting. Is I was not very successful academically. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, and so they said, well, should we send him to an immensely challenged school? And my parents were very nice. They said, oh, should we
Mm.
get him a trade of some sort? So they sent me to a furniture factory, and I became a furniture maker.
Mm.
But it was much later, and then that was in Holland, and then I emigrated to Canada, and much later then, and became quite successful in Canada in the things that I wanted to do. But one of the things that happened to me is that at one point I walked into a bookstore. Kind of looking back, I thought I kind of had failed, because all my
Mm.
friends that went to school with me went to college and to universities, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that
Yeah.
today, but I wasn't
Yeah.
then. And, but it kind of shed a bit of a light on me when I went into the bookstore. And I picked up a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction
Mm.
by Dr. Halliwell. And Dr. Halliwell, very well-known doc, wrote the book in 1993 among another 18 books that he has written before and since. So when I opened the book, I looked at the book and it was about ADHD. And I'm ADHD. I call it a superpower. And so,
Yeah.
and I talked about that. The more I got to know about it, I had no idea initially, what it was, and there was stigma attached to it, likely. And so the more I looked at Google and get to know it, is that I was not very successful in the conventional schooling system, but I had other qualities that have been very helpful to me, and so, and it took me going through Google and getting to understand ADHD. I became more knowledgeable about it, and then it took me 5 years before I would go to my doc that delivered our two daughters, and was a personal friend, and he said, "Hey John, why are you here?" I think I got ADHD, and so we looked at it and we just said, "Yeah, I do," and so. And I wrote a book about that part because I think there's so much stigma, and I felt I had to be more vocal about it. So I wrote this one, ADHD Unlocked, and quite popular actually. And
It's a
so
popular topic. Lots of people are dealing with that right now and destigmatizing it. And it is a superpower because not only are you distracted in some things that maybe are more traditional, but you're able to hyper focus in other
and
things and at other times.
and that's the point, Anne. So now the interesting part about it all is that the more I got to know about it, the more I felt. So now you have to put it into perspective, is that I left school and became a laborer, and I'm proud of that, but
Yeah.
but the kids are hard on each other, and all the other kids that went to university and colleges, they were no longer my friends, and I was kind of a laborer, so kind of looked down on a bit, and I felt that I had to start all over again, and that I could be just as successful as the other people were, but in Holland it was this way, is that if you want a job, at some point you're going to get married and you want a career, maybe even go into business. And the challenge in Holland was always saying, okay, that looks very good and you seem to have qualifications. Where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any
Hmm.
diplomas. And so I went to Canada and, with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I was going to start right from the bottom up, and I wanted to go to British Columbia. I was going to build a sawmill. So that's what I was going to do. And then when I came to Vancouver, Canada, I went to the immigration department, and I couldn't speak English. I didn't know a soul. I didn't have a job. Talked to the German fellow and told him what I wanted to do. He said, Prince George, they're building sawmills and lots of opportunity for you there. So I went there, and that was July of 1965. And when I came off the bus here with my suitcase, my 3 books, and my 2 sets of clothes I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I did have lots of is attitude. I always, no matter how tough today is, I always know it's a better day tomorrow. That's typical me from the time I was young. The second one,
Hmm.
that I have passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And the other part that I have is work ethic. Is I work harder than anybody. And so I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning, even now at 83, and I always make my bed and I always give it the best I can and enjoy things. But the point that I was going to make, and you already pointed it out with ADHD, it was not until I was 57 years old when I discovered that, and I bought the book, Driven to Distraction, and I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am, and and
Mm.
and so, and then obviously it took time for me to kind of go to Google, and kind of the more I looked at it, the more I got to understand it. Precisely what you were saying is that I know that initially the frequency of occurrence I thought was about 8%. And then the
Mm.
more I saw about it, that it is much higher than that. Now the interesting part about it is that that Dr. Halliwell that wrote this book in 1993, and I bought the copy in 1997, still have it. I podcasted Dr. Halliwell, and my podcast is 203, just in case you want to at some point take a look at it. Very interesting interview.
Yeah.
So I talked to him, and so by now I had decided, at least in my mind, and all the research that I did, and I heard it more frequently all around me, is saying that, as I was interviewing it, is saying that I believe from the things that I have heard, is that the frequency of occurrence, I always thought initially it was 8%, it's probably more than 20. He said, no, John, it's more than 25. And,
Wow.
and I agree with that. And then the other part that I found is, through my experience, is that with successful CEOs or entrepreneurs, and successful, and that's the operative, at least in my mind, would be at least 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, more than 75%.
Oh,
And
wow.
I
Great from the
agree with him.
expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that became, for me, something important. And the more speaking about it, even still on a day-to-day basis, I hear about it. And I do a lot of presenting and a lot of interacting with people. And the book ADHD has become quite popular. And, but I say it's not only for ADHD, it's also for people that have been affected by trauma and subsequently are slow learners, and those kind of things. And so, important part for me. So that's why I kind of wrote those.
Yeah, and your story is really serendipitous too, the way it all came together. I relate to the feeling at a certain point in your life kind of behind, compared to your peers. Like a lot of my peers, they became doctors or, got on to do their PhDs while I was a yoga teacher. And this was
Yeah.
before I wrote a book, before I did. And I was like, oh, I'm going to India and they're having children. And so there
Yeah.
was this like a little, it's a different pathway. But now I have, I was going to say I caught up, but you never catch up. It's not a race. But I feel comfortable in my own like path now when I didn't necessarily when I was younger.
And that's the point, and that you're making,
Mm-hmm.
and the observation that you have is correct. And you read my bio likely and seen
Mm-hmm.
the path coming out of Holland, the war years, and all those kind of
Struggle.
things, and then starting from the bottom and starting all over again here. And it's not about my success, but I've been quite successful. But then a couple of things were important to me is that discovering ADHD was something that was major to me, and then I felt I had to be more vocal about it because, as I said earlier, I was 57 when I read the book of Dr. Halliwell. Well, I first got affected by ADHD mentally, at least in my mind, is when I failed grade 3 and then grade 7. So I was 13 years when I became a laborer, if you wish. That served me well. I did a keynote presentation actually just today. I do a fair amount of keynote presentations. Speaking at different topics, but this one was an interesting one because I could talk about ADHD and my experience around it. But something they requested among other issues that they wanted me to talk about. And so then I told them about the time of the school and saying that, obviously I failed grade 3 and then grade 7 3 times. And then he said, did you feel bad about that and feel troubled by the grade 7? And I say, yes, I did, very, very much so. I should have left earlier.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because the school, I was
Wasn't
never
right.
there really meant. So just kind of making the point that I'm proud of that today because my way of learning was different than anybody else's. And obviously, I've acquired a number of skill sets. We had a number of companies. And a lot of people say to me now, with how do you do all the things that you do? Nearly 83 and a half, nearly 84, and you write all these books, and then you do have these 10 companies, and then you do, podcasting and speaking and keynote speaking and all energy. How do you do it? I say ADHD. That's why.
Yeah, and I think a lot of creative people have ADHD and difficulty focusing. That's the most common reason people say I can't meditate, is because my mind wanders too much. I can't focus. And people think that meditation is just focusing. But meditation is multi-step process when you notice your mind is wandering and then you come back to the focal point. And when you have ADHD or really busy mind, you can get into that flow and that focused state when it's something you're really interested in, right? Then you get really zoned into it. But if you're not interested in it, it becomes harder. But that's what meditation is it's training your brain. It's like boot camp for your focus.
So I'm interested in it, so I want you to work with me, and we'll
Yeah.
do that
Mm-hmm.
together. So I'm the kind of individual who says mediation. You asked me the question, have you done it? No, I don't. But what is it really? And you explained it already partially.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can do a little session while we are sitting here at the same time. Now already I told you I have this go-go mind, and my I have to tell you this one too, and then you can kind of put it in perspective. So with ADHD Unlocked, one of my friends that wrote the foreword in it is Tracy Lotz, and she is a medical doctor and a surgeon, and she's ADHD. And what she would say is, even in here, that all the squirrels are running around and she's trying to line them up and saying, this one is going here, they're going, so, and training the squirrels to kind of,
and a lot of high performers, like surgeons, it's like you have to focus, right? Or somebody's going to die. And that forces you to focus. Like, it feels good to focus. It feels good to get in flow, be in the zone, doing a work project you enjoy. It doesn't feel good to fail school or to not be able to focus, right?
I'm
So
very good at focusing in things that I like. Then I'm
interested.
exceptionally good. And then I have an amazing memory, even for an old guy, and and so that's what I do. But okay, let's talk about mediation. As so there now you have me now, and I'm obviously an ADHD, a classic one, and and I'm learning about mediation. What can I do to kind of say, okay, slow down, relax? What do we do?
Yeah, so it is focusing in a relaxed way, which means that doesn't mean you're necessarily fully relaxed and like all things are easy. What it means is that when your mind wanders, you don't get hard on yourself. You accept that that's part of the process. Your mind is going to wander and your brain is going to notice, and you're going to come back to the focal point. That's what meditation is. It's the process of coming back to the focal point. So we could do a variety of focal points. It doesn't have to be seated on a cushion on the floor with perfect silence or chimes in the background, right? It can be anywhere. On the cover of my book, Meditation for the Real World, you have somebody sitting on a subway train, and they have their feet grounded down. And that's the first thing I would say to you and the listeners right now is notice how you're sitting. You might as well sit a little taller, even in your chair. Or if you're standing, readjust your posture. Because if you align yourself so that your head is floating up and you have good posture, you can breathe better. Your heart can function better. Your brain can function better. So the first thing is readjust your posture. And then you can do this anywhere, anytime. Perfect. Feel your feet on the ground, pressing them down. Feel the head rising up. And then we'll bring our attention to a focal point. Right now, let's just focus on our breath. You can have your eyes open or closed, whatever helps you focus more. If they're open, I suggest to like stare at maybe something on the wall ahead of me or something.
I'm
If they're
looking at you.
closed, perfect. And so what you'll do is you'll simply notice your natural breath. I don't want you to change it. Notice starting with the movement of your breath.
You're not saying, why is this guy staring at me, huh?
I'm used to it.
Yeah, no, just kidding.
Maybe you can feel the movement of your breath in your rib
Yeah.
cage. And even in your abdomen, moving with each breath.
Yeah, I do.
Feel that
Yeah.
movement, notice
Yeah.
that movement.
Yeah.
And then feel your breath at the tip of your nose now. You'll feel the air moving in and out. And I want you to pay close attention. And for some of us, we might need to close our eyes to be able to pay this close of attention, bring the awareness to sensations.
Closing my eyes.
And feel the air coming into your nose. You'll notice that it's a different temperature than the air coming out of your nose.
Yeah.
So just observe that for the next few moments as your body humidifies and warms that air when it comes out. It's different. You feel the flow of air right at the patch of skin beneath your nose. And just focus on that flow of air at the patch of skin beneath your nose for the next few breaths. Notice this breath fully. And notice this breath fully. And if your mind wanders to a sound in your space or, wow, this is silly, whatever comes to your mind, notice that monkey mind, the squirrels popping up in your mind too, and then come back to noticing the flow of your breath right around your nose and nostrils. We'll do this for just 5 more slow, intentional breaths. And when you're done, begin to flutter your eyelashes if your eyes are closed, to open your eyes. Notice all your senses. Notice what you see, what you hear, what you physically feel in your body, maybe even what you taste and smell. And see if for a moment you can take in all your senses simultaneously. Take in this moment and notice how that feels. So that is a brief taste of a meditation. We could do a variety of focal points. It doesn't have to be the breath, but that's one classic one. What did you notice, John?
It's certainly relaxing. There's no question about it. And so I can see, like I can get in a situation where I'm just go, a lot of things on my mind, is that if you could just sit down and do exactly what you suggested, at least for the ADHD mind, it would kind of settle you down and kind of create that feeling of peace.
Yeah.
And likely clarity.
Clarity, better focus.
Yeah.
And also, they've shown in research that meditation is helpful for ADHD. So it is something that can complement your regular care and what you're doing.
Makes sense to me, Anne, because, I had not done it, but, as soon as you mention it, and obviously you're knowledgeable and to take me through this, I was kind of hoping that we would do that,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's different meditations you can do for different circumstances, right? Like I like to do a very short practice like that,
Yeah.
like a 1 minute meditation right before I go on a call like this to gather myself so that I can be more present and clear in my speech. You
Right.
could do a meditation perhaps to wind down at the end of the day to help you sleep better, or I even have a meditation in the book for if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep, where you can kind of memorize it and guide yourself through it because you don't want to pull up your phone and look at the clock and
No.
scroll at that time. So there's meditations for each situation in life.
But the one that we did,
Hmm.
kind of relaxing, sitting straight, closing your eyes if you wish. In my case, that
Yeah.
felt comfortable. Then is that a classic one that you would recommend, or are there
Yeah,
other ones?
we use a mindfulness technique, and that is a great classic one for many circumstances, for relaxing, for focusing. But I will give one warning. You remember
Okay.
I said that I pass out at the doctor's office? Well, that is not the technique I would do if I was about to have a panic attack and pass out at the doctor's office. Because the reason is then you're going to notice your breath is fast and it's going to
Yeah.
make you more anxious, right? So
Yeah.
if you've ever done a meditation technique that like didn't feel right or even kind of made it worse, it's just because you're doing the wrong technique for the wrong time. It's not because you're bad at meditating, right?
No.
So for me, I was actually told, okay, you pass out of the doctor's office, go notice your breath. So I did. I noticed it and I was panting and then boom,
Yeah.
on the floor faster. And
Yeah.
so I had to discover other techniques that would help me. So what helps me actually in that situation, if any of your listeners also tend to have panic attacks, is to feel my body against the surfaces beneath me. So if you have your feet on the ground, feel the outside of your body touching the floor, feel maybe your thighs against your seat and just feel those points of contact. And with each exhale, I make the exhale a little longer and I imagine my body melting down into that surface, into that support. Try that for the next few breaths. Nice long exhales and feel your body releasing into the support. This is grounding. It helps
So
you
right through
become
your mouth,
connected.
right? Yeah.
I actually do the in and out through the nose because your nose filters the air. So generally, I keep my mouth shut. So nobody even needs to know I'm doing it. It looks completely normal. And I'm just allowing the breath to be nice and long with the exhales. So I'm integrating a little breath work that's going to enhance that relaxation response so that I'm less likely to pass out. But it brings my attention to the outside of my body rather than the inside because then you start to notice the anxiety and it can be worse. So there's some caveats, but yeah, the one I gave you with the breathing, it's really good for most situations.
Yeah. So I think that it certainly gives me a feel of comfort, and I go
Hmm.
through periods that there is a lot of stress, or as you were indicating, before you started the podcast, maybe it's something you just want to relax and give that deep breathing first to kind of feel you relax, and then that takes your body, and then at the same time put to rest or your mind, and then doing the deep breathing that we did earlier, focusing on one point, and then or close your eyes and then do about 5 or 10 of those.
Even just a few breaths.
Yeah.
It could be just a few breaths all the way to a few minutes, and you're going to feel those effects depending on how much time you
Well,
have.
I could feel the effect after the 5 that we did. Already
Yeah.
makes me feel better, so the
Yeah, it's amazing how there's immediate effects from
yeah,
meditation. We
yeah,
think that we need to do it for months and months to get effects, and we do see profound effects after months and months. We see changes in your brain tissue
right,
physically for months, but immediately your blood pressure is going to go down. Your heart
right,
rate is going to slow. Your
yeah,
brain waves are going to change from like an active brainwave state to that relaxed alpha brain waves or even into some brainwaves that are typically seen in children or in sleep. So meditation can put us in these states immediately. You're having that that high, like the runner's high, the endorphins are being released in your
Right.
brain, similar to like when you're exercising. But it doesn't take long to get those effects as you felt.
Now, people that are, I know a lot of people, even some friends that I have, that always seem to be stressed out or have anxiety and stress in a combination.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to do that and saying, why don't you wind down, relax?
Yeah, that doesn't work. Telling people to relax doesn't work so well, does it?
So the key is probably mediation. Is it?
Yeah, I think meditation is a amazing tool to help with stress and anxiety. And I think that most people think like it's esoteric, like it's for monks in the monastery, it's for the yoga people, it's for,
Yeah.
but really you can do it anywhere, anytime. You can integrate it into your life.
It's just like you said. You can sit on the bus and then just kind of put yourself there, inhale and through your nose and exhale and close your eyes if you wish, because nobody will think anything of it.
Yeah, and it can be loud too. It doesn't have to be perfectly silent. The sounds around you can be
Yeah,
incorporated into your present moment awareness. It's
yeah,
not just about it being this peaceful place all the time. It's actually about your interpretation of it and you being able to be at peace amidst the chaos.
yeah. So I'm kind of
And
thinking, like I spend a lot of times in airplanes. There,
mm,
I fly, and then just sitting in the airplane and just kind of relaxing and winding down. Yeah, that's a good
there's
example.
a whole
That
section
is the
of the book
picture. I like it.
of, of how to meditate in your travels. And there's a
Okay,
section
so
called At the Airport and in Flight.
and so, what should I be doing there different than we just did now?
Yeah, so at the airport, I wouldn't close my eyes, right? Because I've actually been robbed at an airport before. So I would keep my eyes open. And it's so interesting to watch at the airport, right? But you don't want to
Yeah,
stare at people. So you're not like watching and then turning your head. Instead, you're just allowing kind of a glazed vision of everything moving in front of you. And you're just
right.
accepting it. Because you were one of those people running around a few moments ago, right?
Yeah.
This is your chance to sit down and settle. I like to even sit in those massage chairs sometimes, but find a place where you can sit down and you can have your eyes open and observe, hear the sounds, or you can put on headphones, put on a song that you like, and just listen and observe and be present with what's there. So with meditation, we're not getting into a conversation in our head about like this person. Well, we are. It comes up. You're going to start thinking, this person, I wonder where they're from. But no, just come back to being present and taking it all in. So we're trying not to evaluate and judge each situation around us. We're just trying to be present.
So you should be at peace in your mind, right? Not thinking about, oh, the bank this and all this other stuff. And no, just kind of stop. Don't do that. Just focus
I think
on,
that's a misconception. People think it is the stopping of your thoughts. And I want to make sure people don't think that
right.
because it will naturally stop. It'll naturally slow down, really, rather than stop. It's like, it'll be like you become an observer where you can step back and you can watch all of the thoughts coming up, but you're not getting involved in them as a conversation in your head.
So it
So
becomes
rather
a
than thinking of it
sense
as
of comfort.
yeah, you're able to become an observer rather than actively involved in those thoughts. So
Right.
don't think of it as stopping your thoughts. Think of it
No.
as observing your thoughts. The thoughts
Right.
are going to come and go. And it's kind of like you can imagine you're watching clouds. You're watching clouds, they change shape in front of you, they pass by you. You're watching the clouds go by. So the thoughts are going to come and go. And thoughts are part of meditation. But what you'll notice is they start to slow down a little bit, or they become less sticky. They become less like identified with who you are. You're not like believing all of your thoughts. Your thoughts are not facts. You don't have to believe them.
Now, the more you do it, the more comfortable you will feel in doing it, and the more rewarding it will become, right? Because I see so many people doing it around the world, like what you were saying, or those monks or the others, but unless you are practicing it and become comfortable with it and say, this works, right?
Yeah,
Then
with
it can be
practice, you
very,
improve.
yeah,
Yeah, you don't become perfect. Your mind is still going to wander at times,
yeah,
but practice makes you more present. It doesn't make you
right,
perfect, right?
right,
So practice is key. And even though you may practice every day, there may be one day where you are all over the place and there's extra squirrels, right? There's extra
yeah,
monkeys in your mind. And
yeah,
that's okay too, because things change through the day, things change through different seasons of life, or if you're dealing with a lot and observing, oh, wow, I'm very distractible right now. That's an important thing to notice too, because it's affecting your other work and your relationships too.
exactly. Very interesting. And so I learned something, and I'm going to practice it for sure, because I was a believer, but I don't know exactly what is the best practice to do it. Obviously, I learned that from you today, and
And for your listeners, if they want to get into meditation and try more practices, if they go to meditationfortherealworld.com, you
okay,
get audio meditations that go with the book. So you can get the
okay,
book and you'll see the step by steps, but also audio meditations that include music engineered to optimize your brain waves so that you can get
I
deeper into the practice.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's excellent, Anne. Now, so we nearly spent a whole hour on. I learned a lot. So just taking it just a little bit, coming back. So what brought you to Hawaii?
Mm. So I came to Hawaii because I had actually sold all my stuff after I wrote Science of Yoga to travel the world and go on, a book tour. I knew the book was going out in Japanese, so I had something planned in Japan and in Germany, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
So now with
COVID.
nowhere to live and no stuff, I ended up in my mom's basement. And a little bit of that, I was like, you know what? I need to get away. And so I went to Hawaii for a getaway weekend, week-long vacation, and it's turned into 3 years. I just never left. I kept having things to do next week, and it was a great place to stay. So I've stuck
Good
around.
choice.
Yes, I'm
So
glad to be
there,
here.
after all the success, and you're ready for the world tour, and then all of a sudden everything changed in the world. COVID-19 came, and where did you end up? You love your mom, obviously, but in mom's basement. And,
I
and
know,
then
I know.
but the choice was a good one. It's always amazing how then life turns around. Well, this has really changed your life in terms of, because it's very obvious to me what you're doing is unique, and then the foundation that you have laid, starting right in Virginia when you got your training and your education, all of that has served you well, and including Mandarin and all the other things that you did, Spanish, and sometimes you wonder as to, oh my God, I spent so much time there and there and there. Where am I going? Nobody wants to hire me because now I got another problem. I know too much.
Well, I mean, I
So
think my journey, like yours, was quite serendipitous, where there were times in our life where we were doing something that it didn't feel like, the same as other people, and we weren't so sure. But then in the end, it all made sense. It's like,
exactly.
oh, that's why I had that skill, and it brought me to who I am today and what I can offer people.
And that's the point, So then
Yeah.
that brings me back to, that's why I talk about failing grade 3 and grade 7. I did quite well, really, and so that's why it is important for me to talk to young people in particular, but in the general sense. In my keynotes, it's usually inspirations that I do, and and to young people, say, be at peace with who you are. So many people are so critical and say, if this is not good and this is not good, you are unique. There is only one of you around the world, and so care about yourself, love yourself, try to be the best, give back to the communities, and then the other part that I found is a lot of times that a lot of people don't like what they're doing, and they say, oh, I hate my job. Well, why don't you, can you imagine what you do if you hate your job? You're going to go home to your family and you be somebody that hates his job because you take it with you in some form of fashion. And the same as young people, I talk to them, and when I give presentations respectfully and saying, what are you going to do after you finish that university, college, whatever? And they say, have you thought about a career? I say, I don't know. I say, go talk to some people that do things, a contractor maybe, or somebody that is a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, Talk to, or even an entrepreneur or a business, talk to them because they love to talk to you. And then, so I felt I had to write a book about that. So I wrote a book, and it's called Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And because it makes all the difference in the world if you're doing something you love, like you do, and I do. And then the other part is important to me. Just in closing, I was going to show you is another thing that I did is that I'm writing this book. It's coming out in August. It's it's living young, dying old, and so, and it's not about.
Love that cover.
It's not about age. It's me. So I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
I've read that.
Yeah, did you see that? But this is important. So it's all about healthy living, diet, exercise, and a clear mind, and then at the same time, don't over belabor as to what you are and what you can be, and all the other things. Be positive, enjoy every day, and we live in a beautiful country, and every day is a good day.
I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful to have spent this time with you.
And it was a pleasure and a privilege, and I'm very inspired by your book and the training session. So I will be spending time in meditation.
Yes. Yes, meditation, yes.
Yeah,
you should try the meditation challenge at meditationfortherealworld.com too. I think you'll really like some of those.
I will do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Han. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Stay in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.